Hey everyone, like it or not, these times in our lives are marked by change and disruption. And while we clamor for stability, we probably need a good blend of both. It's what we've talked about from John 15. God can walk us through the right amount of stability and disruption. I got to chat with a friend this week. His name is Stan. His background's in electrical engineering. Had some really interesting and helpful ways to connect some principles of thought and engineering to exactly what we've been talking about in our faith. Check this out.
What we do is, you dial everything in, you go through, tweak everything, make it what you think to be a good system. You tune it up, you think, okay, now it's going to work. And the reality is anything that's running in a stable situation is pretty easy to control. It's kind of like, okay, everything's easy and you think you've done a great job. But what you do is you intentionally, throw a rock in the pond. You make a disturbance hit the system for the sole purpose of seeing if the system can recover from it, get back to a good, stable situation. And so if a system can't recover to a disturbance or a disruption or any problems, then you're not dialed in correctly and you need to make adjustments. Where a properly set up system, it can easily recover from a disturbance. You have a nice little recovery time and you're back to being steady again. What you're really doing with that disturbance is proving that things are good. And that's where it ties to the personal side of, I really believe God uses disturbances to prove out that our system, so to speak, our personal setup is properly functioning.
You're catching it, right? The challenges reveal the weaknesses and create space for growth. This is exactly what God does in our life. He uses the challenges that find their way into our lives and invites us to draw close to Him and allow Him to change us. But we need good frames for that. And so actually Stan had 3 great questions from engineering again that help us shape up how we deal with change and be some great ground to have conversation with God and with our friends. Check out these questions.
So something hits our life. Do we respond abruptly, quickly, or do we kind of take a deep breath and finding that balance? And similarly, when we realize we're on a bad trajectory, do we make radical changes? Do we make minor changes? And then finally, when we feel that change is happening, do we resist it, saying, I can't handle this much change, or do we allow change to happen? And so you really, the goal in all this is that you properly respond to these changes. Physically, things come your way. Do you panic? Do you, step back? Do you go into a locked up mode where you can't make any changes? And so finding that balance lets you respond to, life's disruptions and, either making radical changes, making minor changes, letting change happen, all those things. And, if you get that balance set right, then your, in a sense, your personal self is tuned correctly.
3 really helpful questions that I'll put in the comments. But in short, they're these: change response time, change magnitude, and change acceptance. How we navigate each one of those will dictate how much space we give God to shape us more and more like Jesus. There is so much gold in conversation to have with God and with people that we follow Him with in the next few weeks about how we're navigating change. Allowing God to lead us, allowing God to give us feedback about how we've been doing so that He has His way in everything. Now, we also need some stability, and Stan had a great word on that too. Check this out.
I think kind of what I hit at the end is just the ongoing encouragement, which is, even though it's hard, just spending time getting our minds connected to God, even in craziness, finding, gaps, finding a set time where we're going to meet with God, we're going to read His Word, we're going to pray, we're going to get our minds right, no matter how crazy life is. That's just the fundamental bedrock that's going to give you stability. And if you don't have that basis and you just hear all the noise out there, our world is rocked and you're not properly set to handle it.
In the midst of all the change, we do need stability. It takes both. And as followers of Jesus, we know God is stable. He is the anchor for our souls. He's the shepherd who leads us through the valley of shadow of death. He's the gardener who prunes in just the right ways at just the right time so we bear more fruit. We can trust Him. He is our stability, even when everything else is changing. So let's all lean in, creating space for time alone to rest with God, whether it's in the 21 days of prayer or any other tool that you're finding along the way. And let's not just remain with God alone in a John 15 kind of way. Let's remain together gathering with family and friends and spending time listening to God together through the scripture, through one another, allowing God to sharpen us in the midst of all of these different changes. Disturbance may have found its way into our life, but God is always leading us forward. He's always up to something. Let's give him all the space that we can for him to bring about the very, very best, making us more like Jesus and pointing others in his direction.